Welcome to a Nomadic Network presentation. My name is Leah, aka LA in Flight. I'm a virtual host here at the Nomadic Network. I also run the Los Angeles chapter, and we have a couple events coming up in LA and California. So if you're around, I'd love to see you. I'd love to meet you. And today I'm here with Cathy Fulton. She is going to explain why you should walk the Camino de Santiago in Spain. We're so excited for that. I'm so excited to see such a huge crowd here. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the Nomadic Network just a bit. Before I do that, though, I want you to find the chat at the bottom if you can. Write your name, where you're calling in from, and I'd love to hear your reasons for being here. So if that's your reason for wanting to walk the Camino or thinking about it, or you've walked it 4 times and you're going to walk it a 5th time, then I want to hear that reason. I don't want to just check Caminos off and let's see who's done the most. I want to hear the reason. So you go ahead, find the chat. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you can get a little sense of what the Nomadic Network is. If this is your first event with us, welcome. We've run well over 200 events. Virtual events at that, not including the in-person ones. Let's see if I remember how to use Zoom. Here we go. Okay. So the Nomadic Network is a global network. Ooh, what is this happening here? Global network of travel enthusiasts started by Nomadic Map back in 2019. We started with in-person events. Then, of course, due to COVID, moved to virtual events, which is actually a blessing in disguise because we got to refine the format a little bit. Now we host all different kinds of events. We host in-person meetups, virtual large events like this, where subject matter experts like Cathy come in and share their knowledge. Regional happy hours and book clubs as well. It's really exciting. We have a brand new website, thenomadicnetwork.com. Please go check it out. Some awesome photos of us literally around the world, from like Singapore to London to San Diego. Here we all are. You can join TNN, follow TikTok, Instagram, all these in-person events. We're very active online because we're a global community. We have group tours. All the group tours for 2023 are up. So please go check them out. They're super exciting. We have places from Mexico to Jordan to Costa Rica. It's really cool, the roster. And you can also learn to become a chapter leader in your city. If you have any questions, you can reach out to the Nomadic Network, or I'm a chapter leader for Los Angeles. You can also come to me. I'd be happy to chat about that as well. So we love it when you turn video on. Obviously, you don't have to. Please stay muted so we can give Cathy the full floor. We're going to use the chat for questions. Any questions you have, go ahead, please drop them in the chat and try to start them with questions so that I can pull them out while we're going through the presentation. And then Cathy and I can answer them at the Q&A at the end. Please follow Cathy on all social media platforms, email list, subscribe. Visit her website. You know, she's doing this out of the kindness of her heart, donating her time and her knowledge today. And for that, we could not be more grateful. So we're going to have some fun and enjoy this time together today. Let me give a little background on Cathy. Cathy, this is like her 3rd or 4th time presenting with us. She is a fiber artist, travel blogger, and author of Dream Plan Travel, Your Guide to Independent Travel on a Budget. So she normally avoids the normal tourist sites, choosing instead to discover ways to experience cultures deeply as she travels. And in 2017, at the age of 63, she set out on what was supposed to be a 6-month trip, which included walking the Camino de Santiago, hiking in Scotland, finding other knitters and spinners throughout Northern Europe. This is so cool. And then 13 months later, she found herself in Estonia, still not ready to return home. So Cathy, I know you have more to add to that. I'm just going to turn the floor over to you, and welcome.
All right. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Such a great turnout for this event about the Camino. I'm excited. There's so many people that are interested in walking the Camino. Just a little note that Leah's going to help me by putting any links that come up during the presentation as I flash them up on the screen, and she's going to put them in the chat, and they're also going to be included in a follow-up email in a few days. So you don't have to take notes. You can just listen to all the chatter that I have going on. And if you want copies of the slides later, just let me know, send me a note, and I will be glad to send them to you or post them in a place you can download them. So here's the main, let me see, I always have to think about how to do my share screen thing here. Let's see, that should look good. Now, you're seeing walking the Camino de Santiago slide. So here's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to give you kind of a little slight glance at the day in a day in the life of a pilgrim. I'm going to talk about some various routes on the Camino. There's not just one, there's many, many. Some of the ways and reasons that people walk the Camino, there's just many ways to do it. There's not one set thing to do. And then I'm going to go into a lot of logistics, which are the things maybe many of you who may be planning a Camino are wanting to look into, wanting to know more about, because you need to know these things, as well as a few tips based on my experience with the Camino. And then I'm going to give you a whole bunch of resources so that you can go off and learn more on your own. So first, let's talk a little, just really quick history of the Camino. These are the kind of the routes to the Camino. Before the Christians came to this area and created this pilgrim's path to Santiago, the trail was actually sacred to the Celts and later to the Romans. It was the path that led to Finisterre, or literally Land's End. And the Celtic and the Roman pilgrimage, the understanding is that they were making pilgrimage to honor their sun god, their sun gods. Obviously the sun went down in the west, and that was the end of the sun god for the day every day. So that was very sacred to them. And that's why sometimes today's pilgrims don't just walk only to Santiago, which is inland a little bit, but they also walk an additional 3 or 4 days all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. And you can see there's many routes to Santiago, especially if you think about it. In medieval times, people had to start their journey from their front door. They obviously just couldn't magically transport themselves to the French border to begin, which is where a lot of people start these days. And that's why you're going to find so many pilgrim routes all throughout Europe. And to this day, a lot of people still walk from their front door in, say, Germany or Italy or Denmark or wherever they live. It makes quite a long Camino, but most of the pilgrims start walking here at the French border, somewhere along the French border, or maybe a little bit further inland. There's no one proper place to start the Camino. You can go any part of it or any time, start at any place that you want to. And you'll notice there's also routes from southern Spain up into Portugal, because a lot of Christians lived in southern Spain, so they had to go from where they live. And that's, again, you see all these different routes. Talk a little bit more about routes in a few minutes. There's a couple of terms that I'm going to use. You're going to hear me mention the word albergue throughout the presentation. That's the Spanish word for hostel. And you don't have to stay in hostels if you're on the Camino, but I'm going to talk more about that later. And also, you'll hear me sometimes talk about bars. Bars are not like bars in the US. These are more like cafes. Sometimes they're called cafe bars. And you can eat breakfast there. So they're more of a gathering place for everybody. They're not just bars for drinking alcohol, particularly. When you start your pilgrimage, you'll need to get your credential. This is a card that's going to be stamped at various places during your Camino, especially in the albergues or guest houses where you stay. It's also the proof that you're going to need to show that you're a pilgrim, because if you want to stay in a pilgrim albergue, they only allow pilgrims to come in. And if you want to get your Compostela, which is a document that is your accreditation that you have completed your pilgrimage, at the end of the journey, if you want to get that, you have to have the credential showing it shows all the places that you've been while you've been walking. I also understand that now there is a digital credential that uses QR codes for stamps that you can have on your phone. I haven't used it. I just noticed it while I was researching more for this presentation. It's something kind of new. So let's talk about a typical day in the life of a pilgrim. So you are up and out of your albergue early by 8 or 8:30. You want to get a good start, especially in the summertime when it's hot. I usually had some kind of breakfast that I prepared at the albergue, or sometimes we'll go to the local bar and have a tortilla or something to get themselves started. I usually walked a few miles and then again I ate. I usually stop for a rest stop after several miles, and I tried to find a cafe if I could and had maybe another second breakfast, tortilla and my coffee con leches. Coffee con leches kind of got me through the Camino for sure. And then continue on walking. You're going to be following these yellow arrows all the way through the walk on the Camino. They will direct you which direction to go and are very helpful. It's also, of course, going to be helpful to have a map, but it's really nice to have these arrows always showing. And they come up in all different ways. I collected so many pictures of arrows on the Camino because some are very artistic, some are very official, like street signs. They run the gamut. And using those arrows, sometimes you are encouraged to take a little detour into a specific place. I think this one had an agenda. Let's see. And then usually when I took my breaks, I would use that time to write in my journal, and I'll talk more about that. And so again, one break and walking, a break and walking. My rule when I'm walking, if it's hard hiking, stop every hour. If it's easy hiking, stop every couple of hours and let your legs rest. So this was a day here where I saw almost no one the whole day on this part of the Camino. This was on the Camino Primitivo. Of course, you're going to stop again for lunch if you can. Sometimes you'll find a cafe or a restaurant. I'll talk more about food later, but it's really important that you also carry food so that you can be prepared to eat a picnic in case you cannot have, in case you can't find a cafe. Somewhere in the mid to late afternoon, you're going to find your albergue or your guest house, depending on where you've chosen to stay. When you walk in, someone will stamp your credential. Look at all these wonderful stamps. Every albergue, every location you go has another stamp. This is a prized possession of mine. They will show you around. They will show you where the showers are, the kitchen, etc. You can take a shower, wash your clothes. Usually in the summer, especially, you're going to wash your clothes quite often. And if you got there early enough, you'll have some time to relax before dinner. Then usually in the evening, you might prepare your own dinner in the albergue. Most albergues have kitchens. Many guest houses have kitchens. Or you may want to go to a local restaurant. Actually, that's not a restaurant. To eat maybe with other pilgrims. You get a chance to visit with the other pilgrims. In the rare case, you'll get this opportunity where the albergue itself will provide dinner for you, a communal meal, and it's like sitting down with a family. This was one of my favorite places to stay on the entire trip on the Camino Primitivo. And then it's early to bed, and you're going to start it all over again the next morning. In almost all cases, pilgrims got up when they wanted to, and they packed and they left by the deadline. Usually the deadline to be out of a pilgrim albergue is 8:30, 8 or 8:30 in the morning. So I'm going to give you a quick story. I have a couple of stories to tell you during this time, but this happened in a town called Santillana, which is on the Camino del Norte. I walked the Camino del Norte and then the Primitivo to Santiago. So this town in Santillana is where the cave paintings at Altamira are located. So you can imagine it is a town that is filled with tourists, and it's a medieval town, so it's kind of really hyped up to have a lot of tourism stuff, gift shops and things like that. And as I came into town, I was really hot. I was tired. This is where I was going to spend the night. I needed to find an open cafe really fast because it was getting into the afternoon and the cafes close mid-afternoon, only to reopen again about 8 o'clock in the evening. And I wanted to get a meal. So I walked into town from behind the cathedral, and I was kind of scoping out the main square. And a man came up to me and he asked in a deep Southern drawl, "Are you a pilgrim?" And I kind of was taken aback and I said, "Yes, I'm a pilgrim." And he said, "You are my first pilgrim." And I was like, "What?" And he explained he was on an excursion from a cruise ship. And apparently the guide on the bus had just told them about the Camino and what it was and why people did it and what pilgrims looked like. And so apparently he saw me with my pack and my shell on the back and my staff, and I looked haggard. And he apparently knew that I was, and he was like, it was like I was a celebrity for a few minutes. And he wanted me to meet his group, and I was still slipping out for cafes, but it was quite a funny moment. So let's get into a few logistics. There's a lot of choices about what you might want to do when you're on the pilgrim. So one thing is you can decide whether or not you want to carry everything that you need on your back or in a wagon. I've seen people carry it in front of them. Or you can have your baggage transported for you from guest house to guest house or albergue to albergue. And you can choose to have your bags transported just on certain nights or for all of them. But the one problem is if you're going to have your bags transferred, is you have to know exactly where you're going to stay the next night, which takes a little flexibility out of your planning. The other thing is if you're planning other travel in Europe, for example, and have luggage that you don't need things that you don't need on the Camino, you can send it ahead to Santiago. There's a man named Ivor there who can store it for you. He has the storage service for pilgrims. And I use this service and it really worked perfectly. But you need to wait until, if you aren't already in Europe, you need to wait until you are in the European Union to send it to him, because you need to be, that way you don't have any customs issues. But you can easily send it from any post office. And when you go to his website, it will give you the full information about and details on how to do this kind of passing your stuff on ahead of you. So let's talk about routes to take. So, of course, I showed you all these routes from all over Europe. I'm going to concentrate just on the ones in Spain. I was just talking to Leah. She's talking about doing the Portuguese, which is the route that goes up from Lisbon along the coast into Santiago. There are some coastal areas there. I did the Del Norte, which is up here at the top. I started in Bilbao, actually, the most beautiful route because of all of the views of the ocean. And then I took a little shortcut. The Del Norte actually continues along the coast. I took a little shortcut and went through the mountains to take in the Primitivo route, which was an old route. Most pilgrims, the vast majority of pilgrims, do the Frances, which starts here at the border of France and runs along kind of central northern Spain. There's some great things about this route. There's lots of accommodations and there's a lot of infrastructure set up for pilgrims. The problem is, especially in the summertime and even into the fall, this route is very crowded. Sometimes it's a struggle if you haven't booked ahead. It's a struggle to find an albergue at night. And I find that a lot of pilgrims race. It seems like it's a race every day to get to the next albergue so that they can make sure that they get a bed, because you cannot reserve a bed in a pilgrim albergue. So those are some things to think about. You have to research to decide what areas you want to go to. If you're doing a spiritual Camino, there may be special places along the route that you're looking at going to because of your own faith. So there's all kinds of reasons for choosing the different routes. I do know that this route from Sevilla going north, you don't want to start that in the summertime. It's very hot in southern Spain. That one's the one that people often start in the spring and is, of course, a much longer Camino. So let's talk about accommodation. Of course, there's lots of accommodation for pilgrims along the routes. And some pilgrims, they camp and they take all their gear with them in camp. Some albergues even have space for tents for you to camp at. There are lots of websites that list accommodations that cater to pilgrims, and I'm going to talk about those in a few minutes when I talk about resources. If you want a private room, you can stay in a regular hotel or guest houses along the way. And almost all of these are, you can book them on booking.com. And I have found when I was traveling in Spain, if there's 2 or more of you in your party, sometimes it's almost as cheap to have a private room for 2 of you in like a 3-star hotel or a guest house than it is to stay in an albergue dorm. So you can look at that if you're looking at, trying to save money. That may be a way to have some comfort as well as save money. And then there's the more traditional pilgrim albergues. They only allow pilgrims to stay there. You have to have a credential card. They're usually run by the church or the municipality, and they charge anything from a donativo, a donation, to about 12 euros is the rate now. If it's a donativo albergue, the recommended minimum donation is about 5 euros. I think 8 or 10 is usually more reasonable because they are trying to at least meet their costs. And I usually give them more if breakfast or some other amenity is offered. Oftentimes, some of these albergues will also give you dinner or things like that. Albergues are shared rooms, so you're going to be in a dorm, and they run the gamut from very basic to really nice. In a pilgrim albergue, as I mentioned earlier, you're required to leave early so that they can get ready for the next wave of pilgrims coming through. And you're not allowed to stay more than one night. Again, they have to have room for the next group of pilgrims that are walking. Unless you have extenuating circumstances, you can't stay more than one night. And like, say you're sick or you're injured, that's the rule at all the pilgrim albergues. And almost all of these albergues are on a first accommodated basis. There's no booking. And then there's privately owned albergues, which are just like regular hostels. You can book them on booking.com. Anybody can go to them. You don't have to be a pilgrim. And you can stay longer than one night. And they have a set price, just like any hostel. So it's just like any hostel. If you've ever stayed in hostels, you'll be comfortable there too. And you can usually book them in advance. Regarding booking, I don't recommend that you book your next lodging more than 1 or 2 days ahead. This allows you more flexibility in your itinerary. I never booked ahead on my Camino. I have a friend that has done several Caminos. I think she's here today, and she never books at all on her Caminos. But I think we both walk. Usually we walk during the shoulder seasons. So there's more room in the albergues during the shoulder seasons. Another reason for going there at that time. But I like the pilgrim albergues, and even the private albergues often have a lot of pilgrims in them. I like them the best because as a solo walker, it gave me the opportunity to socialize with more pilgrims, and I think I had a very rich experience because I met so many people from all over the world. So let's talk about food. Okay, this is Spain. You're not going to go hungry, I guarantee it. Some of my favorite meals of my whole life have been those that I ate on the Camino. Of course, when you're burning tons of calories, everything tastes great. And it didn't seem to matter how much I ate, I still lost weight. You'll find that there's lots of cafes and restaurants of all kinds along the route. And it's pretty easy also to find ingredients to buy in regular grocery stores if you want to make your own meal. Most of the pilgrim albergues are also most albergues have a kitchen where you can prepare your own meals. This is a rather nice one. They run the gamut from very basic to really nice. This was a really look. There's 4 microwaves in this albergue. And then if you're eating at a cafe or a bar, they often offer a discount to pilgrims, maybe €1 or 2 off the price for a pilgrim menu, which is usually served at midday, but sometimes you see pilgrim menus in the evening as well. At the midday meal in Spain, many of you may know this if you've been to Spain or South America, it's common to find the menu del dia, which is a set menu of a few choices for a starter, a few choices for the main course, and then a dessert and a drink. It's all one menu that you get. And usually the drink includes the house wine or a soft drink. These are relatively inexpensive meals, and they can, as I said, they can be offered at the noontime and also at dinner as well. And oftentimes you'll see a sandwich sign outside cafe that has the menu on it, so you can see up front what the offerings are. Um, and usually if I ate the menu in, say, the early to mid-afternoon, about the time I was stopping walking, I usually only needed maybe at most a snack in the evening because they're very filling. Here's one. At the left, there is the starter and the main, and then there's the main course. That is a lot of food for one person to put away. And it's, of course, like I said, it's always a good idea to have some healthy snacks along with you all the time, just in case you get stuck somewhere and you really need to get some protein in you because you're getting your blood sugars falling. And if you start to flag, it's important that you stop, you rest, you get some protein, some calories in you. I've often said a little caffeine and sugar, a la café con leche, don't hurt, but you'll be amazed at how energized you are to start walking again. So let's talk about some of the reasons that people walk the Camino de Santiago. I had a huge list here and I cut it down to save some time, but I'll give you some of the ways that I saw people walking when I was walking. There's people that get up really early and leave the albergue while it's still dark so they can get in as many miles as possible. There's people who do little walking at all and even take buses sometimes more than walking. There's people that cycle the Camino. There's people who do it in groups. There's people who carry everything that they own the entire way. Some people then, of course, have their bags shuttled. I met a young couple who would stop at about every settlement, every cafe they came to, had coffee or wine or food or something all day long. They were laughing and talking and all the whole way. I think they were mostly tipsy. There's people that stay in really posh places every night. And there's people that always stay in mixed dorm rooms. There's people with huge overblown packs and those that have almost nothing that they're carrying. Sometimes I see the small packs people have and I can't believe they're doing it with such a small pack. I ran into a woman who had made no bones about it. She says, I'm doing the Camino to lose weight. Some people want to change in their life. Some people are only able to do the Camino a little bit of time year to year because they only have maybe 2 weeks vacation. And so they take a chunk each time they have some time off. There are some people, as I mentioned earlier, who walk all the way from their front door in Germany or Italy. There's people who research every stage down to the minutest detail before they go. And there's people who just start out and walk the days and take the moments as they come. There's also people who are looking for a spiritual awakening or walk the Camino for spiritual reasons. And of course, I even found people that walk the Camino silently. So there's the whole gamut. The choice is yours. It's really a lot of opportunities to make this into a meaningful trip for you. My choice, when I decided to do the Camino, I decided to make mine a Camino of gratitude. Before I began my Camino, I jotted down in my journal a list of things in my life that I was grateful for. And each day I picked one and I meditated on that topic as I wrote. For example, you can see here, I was thankful for my kids. I was thankful for my father. I was thankful for having a comfortable life, things like that. And then as I walked, I would think about these things. And then during my breaks, I would write about this in my journal and meditate on it. You can see these are a couple of my journal entries. And that leads me to another story about this. So I left a town called Cobresis early in the morning. This was a beautiful sculpture in Cobresis that brought tears to my eyes. The day was really, really nice, and the kilometers were just melting away. I had only planned to go about 8 kilometers, but then when I got to my intended destination, it was only noon. So remember that flexibility thing came in, and so I wasn't tired. So I decided, I'm going to continue on. But at some point along the way, I missed a turn. There was a yellow arrow I didn't follow. I don't know where it was. And I was way off track by the time I had figured out that I had done something wrong. Something wasn't working. I was off the map that was in my guidebook. And at that time I didn't know how to use download Google Maps. So I sat down and cried. And then I said, okay, now suck it up. You got to figure out how to get where you're going. And I had to end up walking up a busy highway to get back onto the route. by the time I got there, I had walked almost 20 miles. And then I already knew that at this next city that I was coming to, the pilgrim albergue was closed for a few days. I was walking a little bit late fall, and two of the albergues listed in my guidebook were closed for the season. And I kept having to walk, and I was so tired. I couldn't sit down because when I would get back up, my hips and my legs and my feet just kind of went into shock. They hurt so bad I could barely take a few steps, and it took me a while to start walking again. I arrived in San Vicente finally, and I said, well, I'm just going to have to find something. And it turned out they were having a weekend festival there. It was in full swing, and there was no affordable places to stay. I walked to the edge of town where there were supposed to be some hotels. It was misting rain. I was watching in the cow shelter. I was watching for a cow shelter because I was like, I may end up just spending the night out in the open. It was about 9 o'clock at night, so it was dark. And in the distance, I saw a shimmering light, a hotel. And I just thought, oh, maybe there is a place to stay. But the interesting thing that was at about that time is when I remembered, because I was so tired, I had forgotten, but I remembered at that point, my gratitude selection for the day was I was grateful for shelter all of my life, and I couldn't find any. And it really made me think about how wonderful my life is, even though I was in a lot of pain. So I saw that sign, I crossed my fingers, I walked in, they wanted 35 euros, which was a lot more than I usually spent, but I was grateful that I could afford it. And I walked into a private room with a bath. I wrote in my journal that evening, how do I summon up enough gratitude for this? I don't know, but I think it will be a little while before I choose to be grateful for having enough to eat. So let's go back to our logistics. Agencies. Now, I should mention here that another way to do the Camino, you can do it independently, where you do all your own planning, blah, blah, blah. But there are agencies that will do things for you. You can go in an organized group through a tour agency. They'll do all the planning, all the reservations. All you have to do is show up with a day pack. They'll shuttle your luggage from place to place. You will have a set place, distance that you have to go every day. But if you run into problems, you have the agency to back you up. And then, in some of these cases, you'll have a guide to go with you. There are the agencies often will offer self-guided packages. They make all your plans for you, all your reservations, but there is no guide. You'll just be given the itineraries, the maps, the directions. They'll shuttle your luggage for you, and you do the hike on your own. And obviously, you're going to pay more for these kinds of services, but your Camino is going to go a lot more smoothly. You're not likely to get lost and walk 20 or 25 miles. So that's an option. I don't have an agency to recommend for these services, but if someone in the group has ever done this and you want to recommend an agency, if you'll put it in the chat, I will pass it on in the follow-up email. So I have quite a few tips. Obviously, you want to get in shape. You want to get used to carrying whatever you're going to be carrying on the Camino, your loaded pack, for up to 10 to 15 kilometers, and preferably in the boots that you're going to be walking in. That will prevent you from having those early Camino blisters that I saw a lot of people had. Then if you start your Camino with shorter stages every day and then increase them, you can gradually increase your distance day to day. In other words, take it easy at first and you'll find yourself after a week, you're walking the average length that you want to walk each day. You need to be prepared for rain. I guarantee you it's going to rain on you. The rain can be cold, especially if you're in a shoulder season. You want to have a cover for your pack. I recommend rain pants because often the rain comes in at 90-degree angles like it did here when I was walking. I encourage you to keep a journal. I'm not a terribly faithful travel journal keeper, but my journal of the Camino is really a special treasure. I used my time in the cafes to do my journal entries because if I waited until the end of the day, I was usually too tired or distracted with other pilgrims. Usually I got started talking to other pilgrims. So I just didn't I wouldn't do the jotting down of things that happen. So use your break times to do that, and you might have more entries. I think it's important if you're going to do a Camino that you probably have some kind of a purpose. Um, it's not really necessary, but if you want to turn it into a pilgrimage as opposed to a hike, I think it's a good idea. There's lots of, and just spend some time before your Camino thinking about what purpose could I have for this Camino. I encourage you to go during the off season or low or shoulder season. Fall is an excellent time to walk because the weather is cooler, it's more stable, there's fewer crowds, obviously. I had a couple of nights when I was the only one in a dorm room in a pilgrim albergue because I was going so late in the year. Um, if you can, I would suggest that you do the Camino all in one go. Like do your entire route at one time. I know that there's not always possible to take a month or more off from work. Generally, Camino takes somewhere around 35 days average. So it's really hard to get that much time off of work, family, or other commitments. But if you can do it all at one time, you'll find that after a couple of weeks of walking every day, you get into kind of a special mind or a soul state. And that's when the magic really happens. You'll need the David Downey in a book I read called Paris to the Pyrenees, which was taught walking the Camino in France. He wrote, "You need 3 weeks to get into a pilgrimage. The first for your legs, the second for your mind, the third for your spirit." And I found that to be really true on my Camino. It's really important that you walk at your own pace. You will see the guidebooks have these stages, and most of the stages have like these really pretty decent distances. That says 20, almost 25 kilometers. That's over 15 miles. And there's very few days that I walked that far on my Camino. But a lot of people take these stages in the guidebooks to be like handed down from God, each stage one day, which if you're in really good shape and you're comfortable with that, that's fine. But you'll notice in the guidebooks, they will also show the different places along the way where you can find pilgrim accommodations. So the guidebooks don't expect you to do these in stages. These are just recommendations, just a way to break up the Camino a little bit. I really can't emphasize enough not to walk too far, especially at first. I saw pilgrims who stuck to the guidebook dictates. And unless they were in really good shape, they were worn out, they were sometimes injured. And once you get injured early in the Camino and you're not able to rest your injury for a week or so, you could be stuck. It could be the end of your Camino. So you want to take it careful early on. Also, I ran into a woman who was trying to keep up with her group, and she was physically had an upper respiratory infection and finally had to quit and get some rest. So, but on the other hand, maybe you're really fit, you're used to hiking farther distances, go for it. You may even find you can do more than one stage in a day. So as I said, there's so many ways to do the Camino. It's important to, of course, in the same vein, be flexible, be prepared to change your plans. Some days you'll plan to go a certain distance, and then you'll find yourself wisely stopping early because you're just tired. On other days, you're going to go farther than you planned. I did the latter one day, and I ended up in an albergue that I hadn't planned to be in that night. And another couple, an Irish couple, ended up in the same albergue, and we were the only ones there. And they had not planned, they had planned to go a little further on. They had not planned to stop there. And as a result, we ended up talking late into the night, later than pilgrims usually do. And we have now become very good friends. I stayed with them in Ireland, and I helped out with a lamb festival there when I was there. It was really magical. It was really a wonderful experience. And the Camino is going, if you stay open to them, the Camino is going to be provide you with many of these serendipitous, wonderful events. People often ask me about what it costs. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised at what a Camino will cost you. I recently figured out that you could easily do a 35-day Camino for less than $2,000 US. And that's not including your transportation to or from Spain. The caveats, of course, are that you're staying in albergues, not guest houses, and that you're going to be preparing some of your own meals. And of course, you can spend more, especially if your lodging is in private guest houses every night, or you eat out in nice restaurants all the time. I'm going to be doing a winter Camino this year. My plan is, if everything goes right, I'm going to be starting in February, which is way off season. I'm expecting my costs are going to be more because I will probably have to stay in private rooms more because a lot of the albergues are closed for the season. And when I finish, I'll be reporting my costs and a lot of my experiences on my TNN page as well as in my website. So here's some resources. I can't tell you everything about the Camino. No one can because everybody sees the Camino from a different perspective. But here's some resources for you. There's lots of guidebooks out there. The ones that are the most popular can be found at this website, caminodesantiago.me. And I don't have one particular guidebook to recommend. Just be sure you use one that's got a recent publication date. I just recently learned that all the guides that were written by John Brierley, he wrote guides to several of the routes. They have been recently updated for 2023, and they've just come out. All the guidebooks are going to include maps. When I walked the Camino de Santiago del Norte, I used the Cicerone guide. And I believe that those are also, I believe the nice thing about Cicerone guides is they're almost all available as EPUB books. You recently used a different Cicerone guide for a different hike that I took, and I was able to download it all onto my phone, and then I didn't have to have my computer with me, et cetera, or I didn't have to carry a book itself. So only problem is that right now I just checked these Cicerone guides have not been recently updated after COVID. You kind of want to look for an update that's late COVID or after COVID because so many of the albergues and such have closed during COVID and things have changed quite a bit. Online, there is at that same place, caminodesantiago.me, a wonderful forum where pilgrims talk about their experiences and answer a lot of questions. I strongly recommend that you check out this forum. It's a little hard to get used to navigate, but because there are just so many topics. But I usually just type in use the search feature and type in, and I find the answers I'm looking for. It's a great place to find out which are the best albergues, any current problems. There's a lot of talk about dealing with bed bugs, which I didn't get into in this presentation, but there's a lot of information there. It's run by the same guy that has the luggage storage, Ivar, and so it's really well kept up. Again, there's lots of planning sites out there. Many of them are written by agencies who also offer various services, like I mentioned before. There's nothing wrong with that. Many of them have a lot of good suggestions and really good blogs about the Camino, but just remember that these agencies are going to have an agenda. They're going to want you to buy one of their tours. There's a nonprofit organization called the Confraternity of St. James. It's based in the UK, and it provides education and information about many Camino routes. So it's another good place to start and get information. A route planner or information about many of the routes can be found on bronze.com. This site has been around for quite a while, and it's particularly good for finding accommodation. It is only available in Spanish, but I found that Google Translate works quite well with it. Now, since I did my Camino, when I did my Camino, I wasn't really into smartphones and apps, things like that. But there are some apps, and there are a couple of them that I have not used, but I've seen highly recommended by other people. One is called Wise Pilgrim, and the other one is called Buen Camino. And so they may be worth checking out. They provide maps on your phone. They provide lists of pilgrim sites. They will kind of give you directions like where this turn is, or this is tricky. Be sure you don't miss this turn. That might have saved me my 20 miles that I walked on when I got lost. I don't know. So those are some resources for you. If you would like to read about my Camino experiences, you can go to my website, and I have, if you type in my website name, kathleensodyssey.com/Camino1, you will see a list of all of just the Camino blog posts. And I tried to post every day. This is not actually a Camino resource, but I have to plug it in here at the end. As mentioned in the introduction, I have written a book called Dream Plan Travel. You can learn how I travel slowly, long-term, independently. I travel on a budget, and you will see that there are lots and lots of stories and examples of the way that I travel. It's also full of links to downloadable content, planning worksheets, lists, pertinent blog posts, things like that. You can learn a lot more about the book here on my website, including how you can read the entire introduction and you can see the table of contents. The book is available in hard copy, but you'd have to order it from your local bookstore or an online bookstore. But if you want to save money by downloading the ebook, I have a discount code for this group for half off. That leaves the book at the downloadable PDF book at $8, and you can download it immediately. You're welcome to share this coupon with your friends, but it's only available until November the 25th. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope I've helped you decide how you were going to walk your Camino or put a bunch more questions in your head, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have now. So.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Cathy. That was incredible. And we have tons and tons of questions. For everyone that is looking at the chat, I kept dropping in tons of information and tons of links that Cathy provided to me prior, so I could drop them in the chat. But don't worry, we will get these links and resources out to you in a follow-up email if for whatever reason you're on mobile and you can't see the chat clearly. But for everyone that is in the chat, you can go ahead and start clicking on some links there, especially the ones of your personal Camino trip. We are so interested in that. So also hot tip, if you are on desktop on Zoom, if you're looking at the chat, there's 3 white dots at the bottom right-hand corner. If you click that and hit save chat, it will save this whole entire chat with all the resources to your desktop in a Zoom folder. So if you want advice from everyone else in the chat, you can go ahead and save it as well. So we can go ahead and get started on these questions. I'm going to try to group a lot of them together as well. And then if anyone else has questions, just go ahead and keep dropping them in the chat and I will try my best to keep up. So Linda wants to know, Cathy, did you have a specific favorite place?
Oh, goodness. I had a favorite albergue that I was in called Bodenaya, which was on the Camino Primitivo route. And it was a private albergue, but it was only for pilgrims. And the man there, it was a real small farmhouse, and he had turned it into an albergue. And when you walked in, he said, "Oh, welcome. There's beer, there's tea, there's just help yourself." It was like his home. It is his home. And he fed us a communal. That was the picture of the communal meal that I showed earlier. We had a communal meal all together, which was good because it was in a small village. There was no cafes there. And he was so sweet and such a wonderful host. And at the end of the evening, he says, "Okay, most time when you leave an albergue during the day, in the morning, everybody's getting out at different times. So like you want to sleep maybe another 30 minutes and everybody else is rattling plastic, getting their stuff ready. Here he said, we're going to all get up at the same time in the morning and we're going to feed you breakfast before you go together as a family. So we're going to decide what time to wake up." So we all decided on 7 or 7:30, whatever it was. And in the morning, for wake up call, early in the morning, he started out really softly, the music from Ave Maria, very quietly on the speakers. And we woke up very slowly to Ave Maria. And then we all just got up very calmly. It was so sweet. And then he fed us a wonderful breakfast. We had plenty of time to get off. It was a magical place. And if you're on the Camino Primitivo, look out for Albergue Bodenaya. It's a wonderful place. And I talk about it in my blog post.
Oh, yeah, that sounds lovely. What a way to start a morning. I'm reading in the chat right now that Annie says, unfortunately, David has now sold it. So that's a little sad. He's sold it. David has sold it.
Oh, Annie,
Yep.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. It's hard for those places to make ends meet. But it was a
It's
magical
tough.
place. Yeah, for sure. That's bad news, Annie.
Oh, okay. And some of the questions might be repeats for people who joined later, but it's always great because this is a presentation that's chock full of information. I think it's fine to reiterate some of the questions that lots of people have. This one's a number 39630. I feel like I'm reading out a food order, but this person didn't have a name. That was their name. So where did you get the credential from?
Well, if in the main cities where you might start, I understand that they're usually available in tourism offices. Some of the larger albergues may have them, especially in the beginnings of the routes. I ordered mine from actually I had ordered my guidebook from Camino de Santiago.me, and he includes a free credential if you order a guidebook from him. And so that was where I got mine. You can order it, I think, if you have a local Camino organization, the confraternities throughout. There's organizations all through the U.S. You can Google it and find if there's one near you. You can get one from them. And also check on the forum and ask the question where I'm starting in Pamplona, for example, and that's where I'm starting my winter Caminos in Pamplona. I'm going to go there. It's a big city. It is kind of one of the starting points because I'm not going to be in the mountains in the winter, and I'm sure I'll be able to find a credential there as well.
Okay,
Usually they
great to
cost
know.
about €2 or something like that.
Okay. Okay. We have a lot of resources in the chat. Teresa saying some local US Catholic churches have them. Ellen
Yes.
and Neafia, I'm so sorry if I butchered your name. You can get them from American Pilgrims on the Camino, even online in
Yes.
advance. So these are great resources as well. Thank you all
Yes.
for
Thank you.
contributing. Thank you, Cathy. Okay, so let's see. Question from Nancy. She said, Nancy's asking, is the Camino del Norte more difficult or strenuous compared to the more popular route?
I don't know because I haven't done the princess. Uh, I'm not in great physical condition, but I'm in good physical condition, and I didn't have any problems really because I did it in small increments. I find that this is not mountain hiking. There will be some hills, there will be some places where there was one place where we had to scramble over this headland uh, on a beach, but it was very short. But otherwise, it really was not difficult. A lot of it's pretty level, especially Del Norte was pretty level walking, and a lot of it's just beautiful walking along the tops of these cliffs. I don't know about any of the other routes because I haven't taken them. The Primitivo there was a lot of hype that the Primitivo was a hard route to go to, and some people looked at me, looked at my age, looked at how old I was. You're going to do that? I literally had people say, "You're going to the Primitivo." I thought that was a bit much. But it wasn't that hard. I mean, it really wasn't. If you hike that route was not hard. But there was a part that was longer than the other areas because you had to go a certain distance because the villages were so far apart. But otherwise, I did not consider any of it terribly challenging, difficult. Yes, no.
Okay, that's still great info. So yeah, that leads into the next question from Esther. If there were long periods where there are no towns, what do you think the longest stretch you went with no town was?
It was so wonderful. I love this. I really have developed this. I've been doing research now, learning more about village to village hiking because you can do this in Europe because all the towns are so close together. I mean, there may be towns that don't have any facilities. I did walk through some where there were no cafes or anything, but generally, if you went 10 kilometers and didn't pass a cafe or place to stay or something, that was really unusual. They're very frequent. And when you have your guidebook, you know how far it is to the next accommodation or the next cafe. You have that information available to you. But generally, like 5 kilometers, I think is about as far apart as you're going to see places.
Okay.
Generally, especially on the Frances. I think there's much more on the Frances. I did have, like I said, there was a section on the Primitivo. There was 17 kilometers that was over this ridge, over this mountains area.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing. But other than that, generally I found a lot of accommodations and infrastructure.
Okay. I love the person you said who would stop for a cafe con leche at every cafe bar. I would never get a Camino done if I did that. Okay, so we have some questions that just popped up as well. Some climbing. I will send I will include the chat transcript, the chat transcript with the follow-up email as well. If you want a copy of the slides, we will send those out afterwards, or you can contact Cathy directly. If you scroll up in the chat, you can get her email. I will drop her information again, though, just in case. Myra has a quick question to ask. Which route has the most churches to stop and pray?
I'm not the one to ask that question because I did not do the Camino for religious reasons, but that would be a great question to ask on that forum that I told you about, because there are people there that have done it for spiritual reasons, especially Catholics. There's, of course, it is traditionally, at this point, it is a traditional Catholic pilgrimage. So it's easy to find those. And in the guidebooks, you're going to see all of those kind of interim pilgrimage sites listed in the guidebooks. Even sometimes they're a little bit off of the route. So there are quite a few, I think, on all the routes. Throughout Spain, there's lots of little ermitas and chapels and cathedrals and everything. So, but ask on the forum. That's a really good question to ask them, and you get probably more answers than you want.
And people will start probably dropping in pictures of their favorite churches also.
Yes.
It'll turn into a picture thread.
Yes.
Okay. Mariah wants to know, well, I guess you can expand on this question. Is water only available at albergues? But more than that, if you can't get them elsewhere, is it free? Do you have to purchase something? How does that work?
Water, you can drink the water. You can drink the water from the tap in Spain. So, yes. And it's oftentimes you will see little fountains, public fountains along the way as well. Some of them are very beautiful, some of the fountains.
Oh, I bet. There was someone in the chat who was saying there was a wine fountain as well, but they forgot the city. So if anyone knows where that one is, please go ahead and drop it in the chat.
Yeah.
And Pam wants to know, Pam has a few questions, actually. These are great questions. How do you handle pit stops for using the restroom? Let's start with that. Yeah, let's start with that one.
I do have a funny story on my Camino. Like, you're looking for someplace to pee, you're looking for someplace to pee, you're looking for someplace to pee, and you can't find it, right? And finally you give up. And like, there's farmhouses all within sight, and you're trying to find a place, and it can be really frustrating. Generally, it timed out pretty well. There were cafes, or I was, in a forested area and there was no problems. I will say that one time I came in the middle of nowhere, absolutely middle of nowhere. There was a porta potty, and I didn't have to use it. I can guarantee you that's the way it will work. But generally, I didn't have much problems because, there were cafes along the way as well. And there were enough isolated areas where you could go off into the bushes or whatever. So I didn't have too much of a problem.
Good to know. Good to know. Yes, people are saying they'll be drinking a lot of water, so they want, some place to.
But you also sweat a lot of that water out too.
Yes,
so.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
Okay, so Pam also had two important questions on how late in the year did you go? How late was your last one? And what did you carry in your pack as far as gear?
I carried minimal. I carried we could do a whole presentation on packing. A lot of people talk about what to pack, but I tried to keep things as I had probably a medium-sized pack. So I mostly just had, it's nice because you do have to carry, if you're going to stay in Pilgrim Albergues, you do have to carry a sleeping bag. You need your own sleeping bag, but you can carry a lightweight one, even though I was there in the late fall, because it's indoors and they're heated. You don't need to have, so you don't have to carry a tent. You don't have to carry a lot of food. You don't have to carry stuff for fixing food. You're not camping. It's not like a hike. So you can just basically, anytime just like you're traveling anywhere or going anywhere on an adventure outing where you're doing a lot of outdoor activities, you're going to carry outdoor gear. I usually had something that I wore during the day to hike in, and then I had something to change into. So I got to the albergue, take my shower, change into my, this is what most people do, change into my clean clothes, take my sweaty clothes and go wash them. There's always places to either wash my hands. Sometimes there's actually a washing machine, not always, but there's a way to wash your clothes. Everybody's always hanging out their clothes. And then in the morning, hopefully they're dry enough that you can put them back on. And then you just have your sweaty clothes and your clean clothes. And that way, that's what I did most of the time. So that way you don't need that many clothes. Like I said, I sent a lot of things on to Santiago that I didn't need. So that, yeah, I had trekking poles, which I really liked. A lot of people really enjoy having their trekking poles. I could have done it without them, but I really have fallen in love with my trekking poles. So that's a personal choice too.
That's a really good recommendation. I've heard poles can actually alleviate 25% of your body weight. So for those with bad knees, like me,
yes,
that's really important.
Yes.
25% could be a significant amount. So
yes,
thank you for
and
that.
it will propel you forward. You know, it makes you go
Mm-hmm.
a little faster. It just saves some energy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and also it prevents swelling in the hands, the fingers, right?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
That's true. My hands don't swell.
Oh, you're lucky. You're one of the lucky ones. I'll go on a 10-minute
No,
walk
my
outside
hands will
and
swell.
my
Yeah,
hands
mine
swell.
will swell if I'm just walking with them down, but I notice that when I'm using trekking poles, they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's smart. Linda has a quick question. How do you carry trekking poles on the plane, or do you buy them there?
Okay, yes. You can't get your trekking poles through security. There's a big lot of threads about that in various places. I always, when I'm flying, I always check because I also have knitting with me, and knitting needles in other countries aren't allowed on the plane. They are in the U.S., but not in other countries. So I usually have to check a bag. So if you want to take your trekking poles, your own personal trekking poles that you really like, you're gonna have to check a bag. But a lot of people do buy them there in most of the major
Mm-hmm.
cities where the Camino starts. There's sporting goods stores, etc. And sometimes in the albergues, people have just left trekking poles, and you'll find
Mm-hmm.
them that somebody's left, and you can pick them up that way.
Okay, good to know. Kelly wants to know if there's any wildlife to watch out for. That's actually an important, probably overlooked question.
That is an overlooked question, and I don't know that I have an answer to it, I'm afraid. Of course, the scenery and the landscapes are really gorgeous. But yes, it is a very populated. These areas are very populated, so you're not going to have bears or things like that. But there is, I'm sure if you're a birder, I'm sure there's lots of birds that you would be interested in. Etc. But there's not a lot. Even on the Primitivo, when I was kind of in the middle of nowhere, I really didn't see that much. But this is a very populated area, so you're not gonna. It's the wildlife is all hiding, I think.
Okay. Sorry, I want to go back really fast. Your pack, how large was it? Do you remember?
I've got it right here, actually.
Or how many liters? Wow, you are ready with it.
Yeah, well, this is my pack that I travel with all the time. I don't know if I can show it, but anyway.
I know. I think
Anyway,
it's on
I
blur.
think it's a 20. I think it's like a 20-liter, 24-liter pack. I think.
Okay, that's great. 20 to 24 liter.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And
but
yes, sorry.
everybody's different in how much stuff they carry. I saw the gamut, like I said.
Mm-hmm. Did you practice with your pack?
Yes.
On for a while?
I put bottles of water in my pack, and I walked long distances. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
You want to get used to the pack. You want to be sure that you are comfortable in your shoes. Whatever shoes or boots you're wearing, you want to be sure. You don't want to, because if you start out with new boots or shoes, you're asking for blisters. It's like any hike that you're preparing for.
Yep. Yeah, I was telling Cathy before we jumped on that I did an 11-mile hike one day without any prep and like new shoes, and both my big toenails immediately fell off. So
yeah,
don't be like
me. Your body used to
it. Yeah. Okay, so Linda has a few questions just on like a bit of gear, like what kind of shoes would you recommend? People have sensitive feet. Do you actually like need hiking boots, or people are recommending waterproof Hokas? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a really another personal preference. I use boots because I want some ankle support. for me. But I saw people wearing all kinds of things. You'll even see pilgrims barefooted. So, I can't really, there's not one set answer, but whatever you're used to hiking in, it's not rugged hiking. So you're not going to need some massive, leather boots to hike in unless that's just what you're used to. Um, I don't think, but so it's really just what you're going to be comfortable walking in. And if you train in the shoes, you will decide what's going to work for you. Now, I will say that one time I did a very long distance charity walk, and I actually went into a store that sold shoes for outdoor people, and they specialized in that, and they fit my foot. And I learned really quickly that it's really important, if you haven't done a lot of hiking or don't have some favorite shoes, go into one of the stores, spend the extra money, and get them to fit your shoes for you so that you get the shoe that is right for you, because these people are experts. And that really made the difference between me having or not having blisters, and also just comfortable knees, comfortable ankles, comfortable hips at the end of the day. So unless you already have some boots that you like it, and this is kind of a first time long distance hike for you, you might want to get some professional help to get fitted for your shoes.
I think it's always worth it. I think you do it right the first time, right? And invest the first time to get things right, then it's probably better in the long run.
Just think,
so good advice.
You don't want to go on a vacation road trip and you don't have good tires on your car, right? These are your tires. Okay. So make sure that you are taking care of your feet. They are doing the hard work for you.
Yeah. That's really good. Really good advice. And everyone, like you said, everyone's Camino is personal. It's different. I saw someone, I wasn't on the Camino, but I read about someone that posted that they walked the entire thing in Crocs. My feet could never, but that's what they were comfortable in. So.
Yeah. The other thing is socks, and I use smart wool socks in all my hiking. I love them to pieces. Nice. But wool socks are really, really nice. Merino socks is another good investment. That's going to help with your blisters a lot.
Yes. Greg has some great info.
One other thing is a lot of people put Vaseline on their feet or a Body Glide or something like that, and that will help with the blisters.
Oof. Okay. Good tips. Really good tips. Cheryl and Greg also dropped some tips in the chat as well, if anyone can see those. So, all right. I think this covers the majority of the big questions. Cathy, thank you so much for hopping on and just sharing all of your knowledge with us. If anyone else has any other questions that didn't get answered between Cathy and myself, please reach out to her. I'm sure she would love to connect and chat with you. There are several ways to follow and connect with Cathy. I dropped them again in the chat. I will go ahead and save this chat down so that we can send the transcript to in the follow-up email as well. And Cathy, you have been amazing. There's just an endless, room of knowledge, I'm sure, that you can just share with us. And this is just the tip of it. So we appreciate you very much.
Thank you everyone for joining too. It was really great to have such a great number of people. Thanks so much. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun preparing for this, because like I said, I'm getting ready to do this Camino in February, which is going to be quite cold, I think, but it's fun because I kept reminding me of things I need to do for this upcoming Camino.
Oh, that's great. What better way than to reinforce your knowledge and your plans than by teaching the rest of us how to do this, right? All right. I'm going to go ahead and close out the presentation with a few Nomadic Network slides of my own. So thank you everyone for staying with us to the end here. Let's see. Just going to forward through. So we have a couple upcoming meetups tomorrow. Virtual California chat. The state of California is massive, so we love to bring everyone together every once in a while and just talk travel. Minneapolis meetup is happening also tomorrow. That is in person. That is so exciting. And then our next virtual event is on Thursday, Simple Health Hacks to Feel Your Best on the Road, which is so relevant to this Camino chat. So please come join us for that one. All of these events are free to join. So check out thenomadicnetwork.com/events. And we have events, I believe, for the next 2 months on there. Group tours, like I mentioned earlier, are up on the website. Just go to thenomadicnetwork.com/tours, and you can check out what's happening in 2023. Book club. We have Nomadic Matt's, the Nomadic Network's very own Chris Oldfield, coming on to present his book, The Dogs of Nam. So him and Matt himself will be discussing this book. You do not have to have read it before you come to the book club, but it will be so incredibly interesting. He is an incredible author, and you can come get your questions answered, ask the author questions, and just listen in. You don't even have to have read the book yet, but this one will be wonderful to witness if you would like to join us. So thank you again. This would not be the same if it was just Cathy and myself chatting. So we appreciate every single one of you for being here. Tell a friend about one of our events next time, bring them along, and we'll see you soon, Nomadic Network. Take care.